Um, Nico, did you want to talk about um future courses and stuff, or should we just jump into the pull request course?
No, no, just jump in. I need to talk to you first about this, so just jump into the course.
Okay, sure. Okay, everyone, hello. We're going to be talking today about pull requests. I don't know, has anyone had a chance to look at this material that I put together? You can say yes, or like raise your hand or thumbs up or something. Has nobody looked at this?
I've seen a lot of emails, notifications showing all of this, but no, I haven't had a chance.
Okay, that's fine. I'll go through it step by step, so there's no need to like have prepared in advance. But I think a lot of you are probably familiar with doing pull requests. I think a lot of you are already doing pull requests, but in this tutorial, we kind of have the step-by-step workflow of how it works, and I'll demonstrate that just so we have that kind of documented. But there's also in the learning objectives, we'll also talk about things that maybe we haven't thought about as much, and even putting this material together for me was useful, and just thinking about some of these things like it's always good to review best practices on how to create a really good pull request. So I'll talk about best, like some ideal practices, and we can talk about some examples. And these are things that not even, no one actually ever, or, hardly ever writes a perfect pull request, but it's good to know these best practices and keep them in mind when you're doing them. So I'll show some examples of what would be ideal to include, and we can just keep that in mind. And then the GitHub pull request workflow, I think a lot of you are probably familiar with, but if not, we'll go through it step by step. And then I thought this was really, this section on finding a good reviewer for your pull request and how to review pull requests. And I thought that was thinking about those kinds of things and talking to Nico about it. This is all very helpful kind of content to keep in mind when we're either asking someone to review a pull request or reviewing someone else's. And then I'll show you how to change a pull request in response to review, how to update from master, which is something that I just learned recently, and it's super helpful. And then reviewing, resolving conflicts. So this happens from time to time. It happens to me a lot with Mondo. And also, like, if you have pull requests that end up sitting for a long time, then as more pull requests get, or as the PRs get merged in, then it can cause conflicts on your older branches, or if your branches are a little stale. So knowing how to resolve the conflicts is also super useful, and that kind of ties back to finding someone to review your pull request, so then they don't become stale and you don't get conflicts. So yeah, so those are the learning objectives for today. So yeah, Nico and I put together this content, and like all of our content in the obo-academy, this is something that I just put together over the last few weeks, and it's drawing on content, some content that we've already developed before. Some of it came from like the gene ontology creation guide, and then some of it stuff I kind of just found. There's also GitHub has a really good documentation on how to do certain things. So some of this comes from like GitHub, their actual documentation, and then some other articles I found online. But like everything we put together, this is, an initial draft of this, and there might be typos in it. There might be things that aren't correct. So we really encourage you to go in, and if you want to go in and edit this page, you're more than welcome to. And if you see anything that's you disagree with or is wrong or could be improved, then please go in and fix this. So this is kind of like a first draft of this, and we hope to iterate and improve this over time. And as a reminder, you can always go up to the top of the page and click the little pencil button, and it'll take you straight to GitHub, and you can edit this and then do a pull request and ask for the changes to be merged in. So as you probably know, but if not, what is a pull request? So a pull request is an event in Git where a contributor like yourself asks the maintainer, like someone like us who maintains the ontology repositories, to so basically you are able to make changes on a file, on your local file, and then push them back into the main repository and ask the maintainer of the repository to review your changes and then merge them into the file. So yeah, the idea is that you can create a pull request to propose changes to the file and then have those merged back into the main file. So in the cases of ontologies, we would be editing on the edit version of the file. So like the mondo-edit.obo file, or like the pedo-edit.obo file. whatever ontology file you're using, you would be making changes to the edit file on a branch, and then do a pull request to say, please review these changes and add them into the main file. The reason why we do pull requests instead of just editing directly on the master branch are for various reasons. One being that with HPO, Peter doesn't really like to use pull requests for some reason, and so we just, to avoid us editing at the same time, we send out an email we have a HPO editors list, and we send out an email to each other and say, locking the file, don't edit the file right now because I'm editing the file. So that works fine. I mean, it ensures that two of us or more are not editing the HPO at the same time. But when using pull requests, we don't have to worry about multiple people editing the master file at the same time. In theory, if we were doing pull requests on HPO, Peter and me and Lee and Sabrina and everybody, all of us could be editing the HPO simultaneously on separate branches and then merge everything back together. If that truly did happen, then we probably would end up with conflicts, but theoretically we could do that. Another reason to do pull requests is we can make edits on a branch and then push them back up to the file as a pull request, and then we have the continuous integration, the CI checks or the QC checks running with GitHub Actions in the background. And then I do a lot of editing on ontology files, and I would say probably like a good percentage of the time I make mistakes and the build fails, and then I have to go back and fix them. So this just prevents us from having the build failing on the master branch. The build just fails on the branch, and then you can go fix it. And then once everything's passed, then you can in the branch and not have a failing build on master. That's what, and I've done a lot of editing where I've worked just on with HPO, like just on the master branch. And sometimes it's kind of stressful if you're like, I'm gonna just make this change and merge it in, and then the build fails, and you're like, no, I can't leave, and I must fix this until it's I have to make sure this runs again and fix it, and it's fixed before I leave. So it's nice if you're on a branch and then something fails, you can just come back to it later and not be like, I ruined I broke the master branch and the master file, and now if someone else wants to work on it, they have to go and figure out what's wrong and fix it and stuff. So that's really advantageous. And then also we want people to review the pull request because we have all the checks going on with the QC and the GitHub Actions. Those check for a lot of different things, but they can't check for everything. So we do need some external human eyes to look at the changes and make sure that the changes are appropriate and done properly. And then just having an external reviewer can just create kind of a secondary review that checks everything outside of what the QC checks are checking, just to ensure that the edits are what we want and intended for the file. And I'll talk more about that when we talk about finding reviewers and how to review. So in the next section, I just have some tips about how to some best practices in writing pull requests. So as you know, or as you may know, when you do a pull request, like if we're using GitHub Desktop, it'll ask you for like a summary and then a description. So this is how I was trained when I first started editing ontologies with Carlo Tornii, who's not been in the field for a long time, but those of you who know him, he's super awesome. So yeah, he trained me to do this, and it's always kind of stuck with my practices is write a really good title and write really good descriptions and describing what you're doing. So I found this article actually online that's some best practices on pull requests. So the title of the PR should be self-explanatory. So do describe what was changed in the pull request. So for example, it's common things that we do, add new terms to ontologies. So you could say, for example, add new term, include the ID, include the term name. Don't write vague titles that have little meaning, like just add new term. And also sometimes if you feel like there's some use case where I think if you open a branch and then you do edits on Protege and then go back to GitHub Desktop and push, but don't create the pull request yet, and then go do more edits, it'll default to naming the pull request title, the name of your branch. So I often use I label my branches based on the issue that I'm working on. which is a practice that I picked up from the gene ontology editors. And yeah, in some cases, if you edit in a certain way, GitHub will default and give you, it'll just name the pull request, the issue number. And this isn't very helpful for reviewers because then they have to go back to the issue, the ticket, and figure out what this is referring to. So writing a nice descriptive title is just, it just helps everybody. And people can, then the reviewers can go through the different pull requests and kind of get an idea. Okay, like, okay, here's a bunch of new terms added. This will be easy to review, or something like that. And I used to do a lot of PRs, and Mondo, and Chris was reviewing them, and he would always tell me if so, like, for example, I would maybe merge terms, and I would say in the title, I would say obsolete this term, and he'd say, no, this is actually a merger, like, please label it that way. So he's been a good trainer too. But yeah, it's just coming from the reviewer's perspective, you learn a lot about what's informative, but just keep that in mind, writing informative titles. And then this is like kind of an ideal description. So you have the opportunity to write details about the pull request in this description box. And I have to admit that I don't always go into this level of detail with all my PRs, but these are really good practices and something definitely try to strive for, especially if other people are reviewing your pull requests. So describe what has changed in the pull request, why this PR exists. So something like this PR adds this new term per request by this ticket. Make it clear, what does it set out to do? Does it edit the ontology file? Does it edit another file? So a lot of times at least at my day-to-day curation, I'm often just editing the ontology file, but then sometimes, like if you import an external term from another ontology for use in logical definitions, or that's probably the most likely use case of why I would edit any file besides the ontology file. But if you're editing other files, it's nice to note that, because sometimes maybe Protege will do weird things and edit other files unintentionally. So if a reviewer goes to your file and you have edits to the edit file, but then you also have edits to like some other random file, then if that wasn't your intention, then that's a red flag, and then you know to address that. Describing your motivation for the chosen solution is always nice to include. And they also advise to include screenshots to demonstrate what has changed. So I pasted an example below that shows kind of this ticket is fixing this PR is fixing this ticket. It's adding new terms, and then these are the new terms that are added, and there's a screenshot of the terms that were added. So this is kind of like a best practice example of adding new terms. So yeah, some general tips about your what to put in your pull requests. This came from the article that I linked above. Follow the single responsibility principle. So the pull request should do only one thing. So this is really, I think this is really helpful advice, especially if you, sometimes it's tempting to create a pull request and do a whole bunch of changes on it, because I sometimes find that going back and forth with creating new branches, and then every time you're opening Protege, and with like Mondo, it's really slow to load. It's tempting to do a lot of changes on one pull request, but then if you run into some kind of problem, and I'm not the most Git savvy person, so a lot of times if I run into some weird problem, I just trash it and start over. So you don't want to do a lot of changes that you end up having to trash and start over. So, and also just doing one thing is much easier for reviewers to review, and it's just more straightforward, just one change to the code at once. So especially if it causes problems, if you don't want to have a lot of changes on a branch and have some kind of downstream problem, like unsatisfiability or something come up later, and then it's harder to undo a lot of changes. So so this is kind of the recommended advice, is just your pull request should do one thing. So if you have a ticket that's like add 10 terms, you could add the terms on one branch at a time if you really want to follow this rule. And then Nico pointed out this example that sometimes a small edit can change a lot of code. So for example, we've done things where like we want to replace like all of the mentions of like Chris's initials with his ORCID or something, and then that changes like, I don't know, 2,000 lines of code, but it's actually just doing one thing. Or if you want to change all the annotations for created by to like DC creator, that would change a lot of lines of code, and that's okay, but it's still just doing that one thing, just changing replacing like one annotation. It just happens to be a lot of them. The pull request should be atomic. It should be small and self-contained with simple changes that affect as little code as possible. So with the example above, maybe that's not the case, but ideally just try to make as few changes as possible on a single branch. And then breaks bigger requests or changes into smaller ones. So if you had a ticket that was saying, please change or please add these 10 terms, you could add them on separate branches if you wanted to do that. Sometimes I wouldn't necessarily always do that, because sometimes it makes sense just to add a bunch at once, but that's just if possible, you want to maybe try to break smaller, bigger requests into smaller ones. And then commit early, commit often. This is something I definitely do, because sometimes I just run into weird problems with Git and I'm not sure why. And so, and like I said, sometimes I just find it easier just to start over because I don't know how to troubleshoot it, or it's too much trouble to try to go and ask someone to try to help me troubleshoot it. So doing smaller commits. So I will save and commit like every couple of minutes. I do it constantly. And then don't make additional changes on a single pull request that goes beyond the scope of the ticket or the pull request. So this is something that I'm often tempted to do, or maybe even do sometimes, where I'm editing, adding a term or reclassifying terms or something that I notice, like, oh, this term, the definition should be revised. Like, oh, I'll fix this typo, I'll fix this. This isn't a good practice, because then if someone goes in to review your pull request and you said, I just added this term, but then you see that there's all these changes in the file, then it's really just makes it more difficult for the reviewer to understand what was going on. So just small changes, commit often, commit early, and be very descriptive of what you've done. It just moves everything forward more quickly. So next we're going to go into the workflow. So I can oh, please.
Can I just emphasize this last point also with regards a bit of motivation behind it? So many of you have worked on ontology projects for quite a while, and we all know that basically we have much less than 50% of the resources to deal with all the stuff that needs to be done. And I think that all of these things that Nicole is saying here, you should basically, obviously you can't retain it now in one presentation, but you can take this every time you do a pull request, especially if you are a beginning curator, and just look through it and try to apply all of this to all of your new PRs, because one of the key reasons why we are doing all this is to decrease the effort that other people will have to work with your pull request, to review your pull request, and to fold it in. So lots of this here, the goal here is you are the one that is providing the change, so you know most about this change, and you are making it as easy as humanly possible for other people to deal with it, reducing lots of effort. So for me, let's say this pull request that I shared in the chat, if I go to a pull request like that, then what I need to do is I need to find the tickets that is related. I need to figure out what is the motivation behind this change. I need to find out, are all the changes, are they all dealing with the expected, with the thing that I thought the motivation of this pull request are, and so on and so on. So for us, really a good title, a good description, and all of that, this is really for making it easier for other people to manage and deal with your pull requests. So you are making the ontology engineering process more effective by making better pull request descriptions and following these things that Nicole was saying. And one little tip, I saw, Nicole, I don't know whether you were going through this later. I saw you showing one pull request with a nice screenshot in it. So one thing that maybe not everyone knows is how to super quickly add a screenshot to an issue. Oh. So this is like, because it's like just a table, it's one of the most effective keyboard combinations to learn. And if you learn this, it's really like you do like tuck, 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 and then you can paste an image straight into an issue. And I think, or in a pull request. So that this is just maybe something you could show later on, Nicole, if you have the time.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just go through this pull request workflow and I'll show demonstrate how to do a screenshot. I only know how to do it on a Mac though. I haven't used a PC in a long time. But I'm sure it's Googleable or someone maybe knows. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna take you through a whole pull request workflow. So I'm just gonna actually, I pulled up this ticket in Mondo, so I won't do the whole thing, but I'll just show you how it's done. So this is all documented here, but I'm just gonna show you just in real time. So we always use GitHub Desktop. This is what we recommend for using for your GitHub client. You can also do this on the command line, but we haven't documented those instructions. And so everything that we have in obo-academy is using GitHub Desktop. So if you want to be on the repository for the ontology that you want to edit. So I work on a lot of different ontologies, so I have a lot of different ontologies loaded in here. So I want to work on Mondo here. So I'm on the Mondo repository. If you don't work on very many ontologies, you may only have like a few things listed here. So that also makes it a little bit easier. But you can also search too for the ontology that you want to find. And I like how GitHub Desktop always has the recent one on top. I'm trying to follow the chat. Yeah, Nico says for non experts, we recommend using GitHub Desktop. Yes, it's much easier. For a long time, I used the command line because that's kind of what I was trained on. And then I used to use a different client called SourceTree, and then switched to GitHub Desktop. And this is really easy to use. In my opinion, this is my favorite. So I'm on the Mondo repository. So we want to create a branch. Right now we're on master branch. I always start on master, no matter where I am, and I always fetch the origin kind of out of like OCD kind of habit now. So if I want to create a branch, and I'm going to work on this ticket that I created. This is a real ticket though. I didn't create it just for purposes of training. This is a term that we actually do need. So I always name my branches after the issue. So I just copy the number from the ticket and then issue dash and then paste in the number. This is a trick I learned from the gene ontology editors. So I can do it this way where I just type in or start typing the label and then it says, sorry, I can't find that branch, and then create a new branch, or I could go to new branch and then do it this way. There's really no advantage to either way from what I can tell. So here I am on my branch, and then I want to go to GitHub, and then I'm sorry, Protege. And so I usually have Protege open all the time, and I have Mondo open, but ask me if I want to reload, and I say no, and I'm going to reopen it because this is not as quick, but I've been told that Protege won't properly reload everything when you go from the option to reload. So it's advised that you always just reopen the file from Protege. When I was working with someone once, that they kept having to close Protege entirely before they could reopen it. I'm not sure if that was absolutely necessary or if their setup was a little bit different, but I always just go to file and reopen. Okay, so yeah, Protege doesn't reload the catalog file and the import. So yeah, so we want to just reopen the file properly. So I'm just going to add the new term. I'm just going to do this quickly. So I'm just going to add, so I'm going to search for the parent class. And then I'm going to add this. I'm just going to add the label just so, because the purpose of this isn't to show you how to add a new term, but we just want to show you how to do a pull request. So I have this new term, and I can go back and finish this later. So I'm just going to save this. Yeah, so I don't always close Protege, and I don't close Protege altogether. I just reopen the file. I don't know if that's not advised, but yeah, I just did it as I just do it as I showed you. So okay, so now we I've added this new term. It's just the label so far, but I can go back and add this later. So, or finish adding the rest of the metadata later. So I want to write a descriptive title. So add new term, and then I usually just copy the ID from the display in GitHub Desktop, and then copy the label, and then And this is going to ultimately, it's going to close this issue number. And it's nice because I named the branch after the issue, so I can go and say, okay, this is 5202. And then it also brings up the auto suggest, which is super nice. Sometimes I forget to go to a branch and I'm on master, and then so this habit of closing either close, fix, or addresses, referring to the issue number up here just ensures that I'm actually on a branch and not just committing to master accidentally. So I like this kind of practice. It helps me because sometimes I actually do forget to go onto a branch. And if I did forget, I could also just create a new branch right here. And then I guess I'd have to be on, I'm not sure what would happen if I wasn't on master, but I can create a new branch right here, and then it'll say move your changes to the new branch. And so if you already started working and you're not on the branch you want to be on, you can still create one after the fact, which is nice. So, and then there's these magic words that link the ticket, link your pull request to your ticket. So you can use the word closed, you can use closes, you can use fixes. Sometimes I use fix because it's shorter. So this is going to, once this pull request gets merged, this is going to close this ticket 5202. So I'm going to create this pull request and I'm going to come back later and finish it, but I can still write fix even though it's not ready to, it's not actually fixing it yet. It still has more work that needs to be done, but as long as the pull request stays open, that it won't close the ticket until the pull request has been reviewed and then closed and then merged, and then it'll close the corresponding ticket. So you can use the word fix, fixes, closes to close a ticket. But if I really just wanted to just connect the ticket to or just mention the ticket and not close it. So maybe, so these changes are, this is the only pull request I was going to do for this ticket so far, then I just want to address this ticket. So this will just link this pull request to this ticket, but once it's merged, it won't actually close the ticket. So you can use addresser addresses, but I'm going to leave this open until it's done. So I'm going to say fix. So then commit issue, commit to this branch. And then this is a new feature that GitHub Desktop started doing, which I think is really nice. It now tells you that you committed, but you haven't pushed. But chance to do it, and maybe you were able to. And I found myself using this great, and I use it more. Yes, we want to publish the branch, and then there's two things we can do here once this publishes. My internet's still today. So yeah, once it's going to give me an option. It's going to say create pull request, or yeah, I think it says create pull request. Or I can go to GitHub and a yellow banner at the top that's going to show me that I could push this branch to GitHub, and then I'll have the opportunity to create the pull request on the GitHub website itself. So this is not usually this though. Usually it's pull request connected yet. I'm doing a very slow internet. Okay, there we go. So now I have the opportunity to create pull requests right here, or if this loads, I would see this yellow. I can just show you on my screenshot then because it's so slow. We see a yellow banner up here once this loads, where you can just compare and pull requests. So either way, I usually do it from GitHub Desktop just because it's all just right there, and it's pretty fast usually. My internet's probably slow because I'm doing a live demonstration. So here's our pull request.
Can I ask a question, or should I leave it to the end?
Oh no, please interrupt.
Because you're breaking up a bit. I just wanted to ask. I'm very, very new in ontology, so commit versus publish branch. Can you just talk about that?
I think they're the same thing. I think initially you commit, not commits it, it saves it to your, I might not get this totally right, but I think initially when you commit, that just saves it kind of locally. And then when you publish, then it sends it up to GitHub into the cloud where it's saved. Is that right? Did I have that right, Nico?
Yeah, so if you the real thing to contrast here is pushing and publishing. So basically, publishing is like pushing where the branch does not yet exist on GitHub. That's like what publishing means. So it creates the branch that doesn't exist there yet, that you have locally. And pushing means that you are like in the lingo of GitHub desktop, at least that we are saying, because publishing doesn't mean anything in Git. It just is a word that is used here in GitHub desktop. And pushing is just if you have the local branch and the local branch already, and this branch has already a corresponding branch in the on GitHub, then you just push your changes from local branch to the upstream branch.
And this workflow, this little figure here kind of demonstrates that, right? So maybe this would be helpful to add to this this tutorial.
Yeah, put it there as well. It's a good idea.
Yeah, if we have time at the end, maybe someone can do that. We could go through the workflow of creating a pull request by editing the actual documentation on pull requests. Okay, so here we are. So we hit we click the create pull request button. So then there's still another step. So this opens the browser for you. And so you have your descriptive title. We have a not a very descriptive description. We can add a screenshot as I had done, and as I'll show you how to do this. So I think there's more than one way to do it on a Mac. Is anyone not on a Mac on this call? Is everybody on a Mac? Okay, so good. So the commands to add a screenshot are Shift Control Command and then 4. So it's a 4-finger command. So Shift Control. I can add this to the documentation. Shift Control Command. I use my 4th, 3rd, and 2nd finger, and then my right hand to hit 4, and then it creates a little like hash or little like crosshairs thing, and then you can just copy the what you want and then just paste it in. The thing I love a lot of things about GitHub, but one of the things I love is the ability just to copy and paste in images like this, and then it creates this weird kind of string. But then if you preview, you can see what it looks like. It looks awesome, so cool. And then just create the, and then I could say more description here, add new term. All that is kind of duplicative. So yeah, I guess there's not much more to say. And then also in this case, this isn't done. So sometimes we can prepend this with WIP, which is a work in progress. But then the other cool thing that I'm more, I don't know if this is a new feature, but it's newish to me, is that you can create a draft pull request. So I can just create a draft so that someone doesn't come in and try to review this and say, why did you only add the label without a definition and everything is missing? So, and that's how I'll know for myself too, that this is a draft pull request. And then I can go back to this branch and edit it more. And then once it's done, I can say ready for review, and then it'll convert to an actual ticket, and then it can be reviewed and merged in. Another way to do a screenshot too, you can also do Shift Command 3, and that takes a screenshot of the entire screen. And I have mine configured so it just saves to my desktop. And then I don't like this as much though, because I don't want this entire screen. You can also go in and crop it, but then that's just like another step. So I like the other option better. I don't do this one very much unless I actually truly want the whole screen. Or sometimes I'll do this one if I'm like trying to like capture something really quickly. So that's on my desktop now, and it'll stay there forever until I clean it up. So yeah, so we created a pull request here. So now I can assign reviewers. I like to add a lot of labels in GitHub. I don't add them as much as on pull requests, but sometimes I'll add them on pull requests, like if this is blocked, like something needs to be done. So then I review a lot of pull requests for Mondo. And so I can look now and see like, okay, I can ignore this because it's blocked. And then Nico also showed me this really cool trick where I bookmarked this, but if you want to look at pull requests that are not drafts, but are ready for review, you can just you can do all kinds of filters with GitHub, but You say is open, is PR, and then minus means not, and then is draft. So these are all the pull requests that are not draft. So these are the ones that are ready for review. Yeah. Okay, let me go back and see what's next in our content. So I'm gonna just give you some more details based on what's documented here. So we went through these steps, create a new branch. Yes, if you want to work on an existing branch, oh, go on.
Can I make one comment about the draft pull request? Because I've
Yeah.
seen quite a lot of different philosophies on the draft pull request around. So a draft pull request is not, so the point of a draft pull request is to indicate to people, do not look at this. I mean, if you're looking at it, it's your own problem. You can look at it, but the point is to send the message to other people. There is no point to look at this. So people like Nicole and me and many others that are reviewing hundreds of pull requests in a month, when we see a draft pull request, we don't go there. Like, unless it's assigned to us, we will never look at it. So, and we might even miss emails about it. So what I would suggest is, as a general like rule of thumb, when you're creating draft pull requests, you should expect no one to ever look at your draft pull requests, and you should not use draft pull requests to express uncertainty about the content that you provided. So that you should say, you should create, if you are done with your pull request and you want a review, you should set the pull request into ready for review mode and not leave it in draft state, because and you can make a comment to say, I'm not certain about XYZ. You can even comment directly on the piece of code you're not certain about in your diff. I don't know whether Nicole will show this part, but yeah, do not ask people to review draft pull requests. That's what I wanted to say.
Yeah. Yes, that's what Nico just said. You can comment. I was going to show this when we talk about reviews, but you could, I've never thought to do this actually. That's a good idea. So I could say, like, if I'm uncertain about this. You can comment directly on the code, which is another cool thing I like in GitHub. I like how you can comment line by line. So if you want to refer exactly properly to the label, you can just click right next to the line for that label. If you're uncertain about this parent, you can comment right on that line too. So I'm going to resolve this because I'm not uncertain about the label. Yeah. We used to also sometimes write WIP. I think this draft is kind of new. We used to write WIP for work in progress, or then a lot of times I would do, if I was working on it, I'd say work in progress and then just keep working on it. And then when I was ready for review, I would change the label to ready for review and then colon and then the name. But now we just have we have the ability to have a draft or change it to ready for review, which is really handy. So yeah, there's a few other things on the documentation here that I want to point out that I didn't demonstrate. So if you want to continue working on an existing branch, so say I worked on that branch, I always go back to master and pull just out of habit. So say I wanted to go back to this issue and keep working on this, or for example, a real example, like in Pado, I work on Pado sometimes. I've been working on some tickets on Pado, like for example, I was working on this ticket. Another thing that's cool about GitHub, so many things, is that it links the pull request to your ticket. So if you say it fixes or closes the ticket, it'll show it over here. But if you just say addresses, it won't show it over here, but it will show it over down below. So if it fixes or closes the ticket, they'll show up here in both places. If it just addresses the ticket, it won't see it here, which that I don't like actually. So say I want to work on this ticket that I've been working on. So this is an example of a pull request that I did. I tagged a whole bunch of reviewers, and then there were some comments, and then just the other day, Sue commented that what I did didn't properly address a ticket. I needed to make one more change. So if I want to go back to this existing ticket, I just click on this issue here with this cute little copy button. And then I can go to my Pado repository and then just paste it in here. And then it'll bring back up the branch that I had previously worked on. Now I can open Pado in Protege, make the edits, then commit directly to this branch, and then which I actually did this morning, and unfortunately my image did not upload for some reason, but that's not usual. Usually that works just fine. And then I made some comments, and now Sue will come back and review again. So that's how to go back to working on an existing branch. Oh, another thing, yeah, you can do is update from master. So if you want to have your branch sync with the current version of Pato, this case that I just showed you is actually quite an old ticket. So presumably Pato has changed in the meantime since I initially worked on it. So I can go to branch here and update from master, and then that'll pull in the current changes of Pato. Yeah, look, there was 358 changes, which is a lot. So then I can just push origin again, and that it'll sync the current version of Pato with the with what was on my branch, and it's gonna I think it'll run the checks again now that I've updated it. So yeah, it looks like it hasn't been deployed, but it'll deploy in a second or so. So I'll run the checks again. In this case, it could end up with some conflicts because it's been a long time, clearly, since I initially started this ticket. It was in 2020. So a long time ago. So yeah, there might be conflicts, and then I'd have to fix those. Oh, another thing to point out is when you're on, this is a newer feature of GitHub, I mean, of Protege. When you go to a branch in your repository, so let's go back to Mondo. I'm currently on issue 5196. So Protege will show you what branch you're on in the bottom left-hand corner, which I think is really handy. So if I go into master, then this switch, now I can see it's on master, and don't reload, always reopen. So yeah, that's another really nice feature that Protege implemented a few years ago. And then I didn't really show you when we did the pull request to check your diff. So the diff is just looking at the difference between the changes that you made and then how the file was before. I use Mondo as an example a lot because I primarily work on Mondo, but another nice thing about Mondo is that it's the file, and also Pato too, coincidentally, the file is saved as an obo file, not as an owl file, and this makes the diff a lot easier to look at. I'll show you. For example, this is the changes I made in the Pato file, where I just revised the superclass for these. So there's a lot less text around the terms. It's a lot simpler to read. This example that I included from the cell ontology, hopefully you can read this. You can see there's just a lot more kind of surrounding text around the term, so it's not as clean and easy to read. But what you're looking for when you're looking at the diff is that you want to make sure that you're only the intended changes were added to the file, and that there's not other extraneous or unintended changes. So in this case, in both of these, the green is just showing a new term was added to the file. If something was red, that means something was deleted. I also have my Protege or my GitHub desktop set up so I can see the file side by side. So this is showing like, this is what the file looked like on the left, and this is what it now looks like. So basically a new term was like inserted into this chunk of text here. This side by side view is actually quite nice to, nice way to view the changes. So I'm realizing we only have 14 minutes left. And so we did all of these things here. So I'm just gonna kind of skip through that. This is really fun part of the tutorial, I think, talking about reviewers. So if you create a pull request, then one thing to keep in mind is that depending on which ontology you're working on, there's not always someone in place that will automatically deal with your pull requests. So a lot of the ontologies, like cell ontology, Uberon, Pato is a good example. There's not any dedicated staff to work on these ontologies, and we all kind of just work on them with, I guess cell ontology and Uberon I think have funding now, but like Pato's an example where it's not properly funded, and we don't have dedicated people that are kind of shepherding Pato. We all kind of do it collaboratively as more of a, okay, Nico says there's never anyone except for maybe Mondo. Okay, so yeah, so in all these ontologies, there's not like a dedicated person that's in charge of managing and responding to the pull request. So So we need your help with helping ask for review. So so if you make a pull request to an ontology, especially one that you're not like heavily involved in, if you don't know someone to ping out or to tag automatically, you can try to locate the developers. There's usually every project has a mailing list or a Slack channel. If you don't know any, if you're not familiar with the ontology team, you can introduce yourself and give yourself some more context. Say, hey, I'm Nicole. I made this pull request to your ontology. I want to add this term, so could you please review it? If you don't know how to find the project mailing list or the Slack, I think going to the obo-foundry probably is the best bet. The obo-foundry, all the ontologies that are in the obo-foundry have a contact person linked to them. So if you go to the obo-foundry webpage and find the ontology and then find the contact person, you should be able to locate someone. Depending on your level of permissions for the repository, you may or may not be able to assign a reviewer yourself. So like with Pato, I have probably write access or some level of access to the repository. So I was able to assign reviewers myself, but you may not have access to the, maybe able to assign a reviewer yourself. So you can also just tag people. So like I did here, I tagged Jim Bellhoff and Nico then this will send emails to them and notify them that I've asked them to look at the PR. So some tips for finding reviewers. So yeah, so the repository should have an owner assigned. Like I said, you can go to the obo-foundry website and find the contact person. That'd probably be a good place to start. So the primary owner of the ontology probably can either review your pull request or triage it to the appropriate person, someone that can. If you're addressing a specific ticket, you maybe want to assign the person that created the ticket. So in this case, let's see who created it. So, Nico did, hence I tagged Nico on this ticket since he is the one that requested that. So yeah, so that's another place to start. And then also, you know, we have our Slack channels for the obo-foundry and stuff. So feel free to always come to any of us to ask for help. And if we know anyone that can help or something like that. The other day, Nico had a really good suggestion with Pato. I had a bunch of open pull requests that had been open for like this one for a long time. And I had assigned reviewers in the past, but then I was wondering if people are going to be able to review it. And Nico suggested that Sue and I become pull request buddies and then I review her pull request and then she review mine. So Sue and I work together a lot and we agreed to do that. And I thought that was a really good suggestion, just to team up with somebody and say, hey, review my pull request and I'll review yours and ensure that these things move forward. Because as you can see, sometimes they end up being kind of stale because, you know, under-resourced and we all have a lot of things going on. So this next section is on how to, before I move on, does anyone have any questions about finding a reviewer? Okay, so next I'll talk about how to review a pull request. So if you're assigned to review a pull request, you should receive an email notification. I think you should receive the notification regardless of how you have your repository set up, because a lot of times, even if you're unwatching a repository, I think you'll still get emailed if someone properly tags you. If you get too many emails and it falls through the cracks, you can also go to github.com polls assigned and see what open pull requests you may have. And this should be covering all the repositories. So I'm doing pretty well staying on top of my pull requests. So what kind of person do we need for what kind of pull request? So it depends on what the pull request is addressing. So yes, remember that the QC check, so we have the GitHub Actions running in the background for most of the repositories, or it used to be Travis, and I think mostly everyone's on GitHub Actions now. So the QC checks are in place in all the ontologies that'll check for things like unsatisfiable classes or certain other kinds of, like in Mondo, we have a ton of QC checks that are checking like proper formatting and I know this is a case in a lot of the ontologies, like if you have too many white spaces, or if you use the wrong annotation for the wrong type of kind of, if you use the wrong annotation property for the wrong annotation, things like that will get checked and it'll cause the build to fail, and then you can go and fix those. But there's also a lot, we couldn't create a quality control check for everything. So we need to have human curators going in and judging the pull requests for things that are not going to be picked up by QC. So thinking about the kind of person you need for your pull request, if you're doing content changes like adding terms, reclassifying terms, revising definitions, things like that, an ontology curator could review your pull requests, like me, Sabrina, a lot of us are ontology curators. If the pull request is addressing some kind of quality control or technical aspects, probably best to go to the one with ontology semantic engineers like Nico, David, Jim, Chris. If you don't know who to assign, we recommend assigning the contact person, and then they can triage your requests. So like if you're making changes to Mondo, you can tag me, and then I can tag someone else who may be better suited to review your PR. And to review your PR, you should review the files change and view the diff. So you should always look at the diff regardless. So you'll see the diff, like when we did the pull requests, I could see the diff that the new term was added in GitHub Desktop, and you can see it there temporarily, and then you can see it here forever. So with this Pato PR I made, I could see that I just reclassified these terms. So it was a superclass of position, now it's a superclass of physical quality. If we look at my Mondo PR linked from the ticket, I can see that I added this new term, where this new chunk of text is added as a new term stanza. So I can see the changes. And then yeah, like I showed you, you could comment on your PR as you make it, or when you're reviewing a PR, you can comment on specific line changes. So like here's an example of a PR that Sabrina made, and I commented to her. And sometimes I just go and make them, if it's straightforward, I'll just make the changes myself. Maybe leave a comment saying, hey, Sabrina, by the way, I think we should have had the PubMed ID not in the definition, but as a database cross-reference. And if something super straightforward like that, I often just go do it myself because it's fast and easy, and it's not like going to be a big learning experience for her to move a PubMed ID. But in this case, it wouldn't let me edit, so then I made her comment, could you please fix this? So some other things to look out for when reviewing a pull request, make sure that the changes address the ticket. So and the example above, Sabrina addressed a ticket that requested adding a new term, and that's what she did. So that was great. Some things to look for would be like poorly written definitions, missing or misformatted database cross-references, like in that example where the PubMed ID was in the incorrect place, incorrectly scoped synonyms, inappropriate annotations, or like in this Pato example, Sue commented that I didn't properly address the ticket because I reclassified one term but not the other term, which is what was needed. So just make sure that the changes are addressing the ticket itself and not doing more than that too. So you also don't want to have unintended changes or unwanted changes on the pull request. And this happens, especially, I don't know, to everyone, but to me a lot. Protege does weird things. It likes to reorder terms sometimes. So this is a case where this is the red, it deleted this term, but then it added it back here. It just moved it the place of the term in the file. This is really okay. It's not affecting any of the content in the file, but that is also not ideal because it makes it harder to review the request. I've had cases where Protege will do this for like thousands of terms and it just looks like a total mess, and I just trash it and start over. A lot of times it'll do that. Sometimes if you haven't actually pulled the file or fetched the origin. So that's why I kind of do this like obsessively, because I hate it when I have to go back and start over. Yeah, and other things in the review to keep an eye out for are make sure that the logic is correct. Sometimes I'll go to the branch and open it in Protege and then look at it, because it's hard to see when you're looking at just changes in a text file. It's much different than when you look at it in Protege itself. So I will go and open the file in Protege and look at it and make sure it makes sense, run the reasoner, make sure it's classifying correctly. If it's using design patterns, make sure that the the logical definitions are consistent with the design patterns. And then if you feel like you're not qualified or aren't sure about the logic, ask someone for help. A lot of us have had a lot of experience working on ontology logic, so feel free to ask anyone for help at any time. We're all in this together. Yeah, there's no magic bullet for ensuring that ontology is logically sound, but just do the best you can, and asking for help is also really good. And then when you add your review, these are just instructions that came from GitHub, the GitHub website. So I won't go through this in detail. It's very straightforward, just to go in and you can add a review, add comments like in here, or just go and go to the conversation and just add comments in the leave comment section. And then when you're done with your review, if you feel like the pull request properly addresses what's described in the description and it properly addresses what's on the ticket, then you can approve the PR. And also keep in mind that not every pull request needs comments. It can be approved without any comments or requests for changes. You can just go ahead and straight approve it, or you can write some encouraging comment like, good job, this looks great. So yeah, that's the basics of how to go through a review. And then if you need to make changes on a pull request in response to your review, you just need to just read the review and then go copy your issue, open it in GitHub Desktop, and then open it in Protege, and you can make the changes just like you did when you originally created the pull request. And then there's a video here on resolving conflicts. It can be a little bit tricky, so if you run into conflicts, I would recommend looking at these instructions, and then definitely feel free to ask for help, because it's not always super straightforward as to how to do it. But there's a video here with an explanation and some examples here below. And then I added some, at the end of this tutorial, I added some further reading. The gene ontology editing guide, some of this drew from that. It's very detailed and helpful. And then there's a couple articles on how to resolve conflicts, and good hints to a lot of the content that I got here on how to write a good pull request. So that leaves us with only a minute left, but this is all documented, and I hope that this is helpful for everybody. And yeah, feel free to reach out anytime if you have any questions.